Political tensions in the Philippines, President Marcos versus Vice President Duterte. Understanding the tensions, President Bongbong Marcos responds to Vice President Sara Duterte's remarks. Understanding the tensions, President Bongbong Marcos responds to Vice President Sara Duterte's remarks. Understanding the tensions, President Bongbong Marcos responds to Vice President Sara Duterte's remarks. In a political landscape fraught with historical tensions, contentious interactions, and complex dynamics, President Ferdinand Bongbong Marcos Jr. recently found himself engaged in an unexpected yet significant political discourse involving Vice President Sara Duterte. The exchange was marked by the president's resolute statements against what he termed as criminal threats posed by a suggestion made by his vice president. In a recent address, Vice President Sara Duterte expressed concerns that appeared to resonate with broader societal sentiments about violence and political instability in the Philippines. Her remarks insinuated hypothetical situations regarding the ease with which a plot against a president could be orchestrated, a statement that carries profound implications in a country still grappling with the scars of past political turmoil. In his subsequent response, President Marcos articulated a firm stance regarding this dialogue. He emphasized that if orchestrating a plot against a president could be seen as a trivial notion, then it begs the question, how much more vulnerable would ordinary citizens be in such an environment? His assertion was clear. Such incitements to violence should not be tolerated or trivialized. The president's remarks underscore the critical nature of language in political discourse. Not only do they demonstrate a fierce defense of the presidential office and its functions, but they also spotlight the sensitivities surrounding political rhetoric in the Philippines, a nation known for its turbulent political history. Marcos Jr. affirmed that criminal threats must be confronted head-on, adding weight to the discourse surrounding governance, accountability, and the safety of citizens. By categorically denying the legitimacy of threats against a sitting president or any citizen, the president reinforces the necessity of creating an atmosphere of trust and safety among the populace. His comment, "Yan ay aking papalagan," I will fight against that, indicates a commitment to not only defend his position, but also to protect the integrity of democratic processes within the nation. To fully comprehend the significance of this exchange, it is essential to consider the historical backdrop. The political arena in the Philippines is characterized by a series of power struggles and a legacy of extrajudicial actions that have, in many cases, resulted in violence against dissenters and political adversaries. The Marcos dynasty itself, from the time of former dictator Ferdinand Marcos Sr. to Bongbong Marcos, continues to be a polarizing subject. As the country navigates through the ramifications of the Duterte administration's controversial war on drugs, political rhetoric has become even more loaded. The martial undertones of political discourse, particularly around the threats of violence, cannot be overlooked, especially in a social climate that has grown increasingly wary of brutal governance and loss of civilian rights. The martial undertones of political discourse, particularly around the threats of violence, cannot be overlooked, especially in a social climate that has grown increasingly wary of brutal governance and loss of civilian rights. President Marcos's response signals an intention to set a firm boundary against the perpetuation of a culture of violence in politics. His declarations are not merely reactive, but serve as a proactive measure to foster a more respectful and civil political environment. In a democratic society, it is crucial for political leaders to model a language that promotes dialogue rather than incitement. In seeking to protect the safety of both the presidency and the citizenry, Marcos is also reaffirming the foundational principles of democratic governance, rule of law, accountability, and respect for democratic institutions. The implications of this stance are twofold. It challenges the normalization of violent rhetoric and sets a precedent for the future conduct of political dialogue in the Philippines. Moving forward, the Filipino people may find themselves at a political crossroads. As unexpected political dynamics continue to unfold between key figures such as Marcos and Duterte, the hopes for productive governance and conflict resolution remain in the balance. These tensions may either catalyze positive structural reform or devolve into a cycle of retaliatory politics that could further fracture public trust in government. In essence, the remarks made by both the president and vice president reflect broader societal concerns and the necessity for a renewed discourse anchored in peace and respect. As the nation continues to witness the unfolding of these political narratives, the Filipino populace is left to evaluate the essence of their leaders' statements in light of a collective aspiration for stability, safety, and progressive governance. In a time when political rhetoric can deeply affect public sentiment and citizen safety, President Bongbong Marcos's firm stance against perceived threats underscores a fundamental aspect of leadership, the need for responsibility and communication. His pronouncements against the alarming context introduced by Vice President Sara Duterte serve as a clarion call for a more civilized political discourse, fostering an atmosphere conducive to democracy, dialogue, and development. This evolving political narrative invites Filipinos to reflect deeply on the pathways toward a more unified and peaceful society.